So let's look at a few illustrations of this distinction and try and get a better handle on it. And then I'll talk a little bit about how the distinction sort of reflects a synthesis of these two major influences in Kant's intellectual life. This influence of Newtonian mechanics that's articulating universal exceptionless physical laws, and this influence of his early pietistic religious upbringing that emphasizes this strict adherence to religious doctrine in this sort of very stern fashion. So, a person who gives to the poor because he or she wants to be a good person, or he or she wants to adhere to this rational command in accordance with their inclination, is acting in accordance with duty. So the behavior is consistent with what's morally right, but it isn't the manifestation of a truly good will in Kant's mind. For Kant, a person who gives to the poor, even against their own inclinations, purely out of reverence, respect for, recognition of the command of reason, that person, Kant says, acts from duty. And notice in our experiences, even our experience of our own actions, it would be difficult to tear these apart. Consider a pretty vivid case. So Jesus, all right, says, I shall feed the poor and comfort the needy. We might want to look at this and try and decide whether it provides us with evidence that Jesus is acting from duty, or if it merely shows that he's acting in accordance with duty. Now, Kant surely would find this statement probably, heretical. Certainly doesn't make this case using this example in the book, but I think it's useful to think about it. Right? So Jesus is omnibenevolent. That is, Jesus' inclinations always align perfectly with the dictates of duty to help the poor and comfort the needy. And so in this way, when we look at Jesus' behavior, we have no reason to suppose that Jesus is acting from duty. We do have lots of evidence that he's acting in accordance with duty. So Jesus' will on this account may not be perfectly good. And in fact, even Jesus may not be able to determine whether his will is perfectly good in these cases, precisely because Jesus' will is always consistent, always aligns perfectly with his duty. Since he is omnibenevolent, superlatively beneficent, he's never tempted not to act in accordance with this command of reason, and so it's hard even for Jesus to determine whether his actions are in accordance with duty or from duty. Now, there are cases where the agent may be able to make an easier determination that sort of illustrate this contrast of ideas here. So consider the character from Futurama, Bender the robot. Bender the robot is profoundly disinclined to act in accordance with a duty to feed the poor and comfort the needy. Or maybe it's the other way around. Feed the needy and comfort the poor. Either way, Bender's again it. And so Bender, right, if he exhibits these charitable behaviors, it's got to be because he's thinking something like this. He's thinking, look, I'd really, really like to rob and kill you, but duty requires me to act against my very strongest inclinations and behave in accordance with the commands of reason. In doing so, Bender is acting from duty, acting against inclination, out of reverence for, subjection to the commands of reason. What might be another example? Well, this is actually an example that Kant talks about. So he considers a person who preserves their life, that is, doesn't commit suicide, but they do so out of their desire to live. Right? This person, Kant says, is acting clearly in accordance with duty. But are they exhibiting a good will? Are they acting from duty? Kant suggests probably not. At least it's not clear, probably not clear even to them. So in Star Trek II, Kirk gets possessed by an alien. When the alien is threatened, he screams, "I want to live! I want to live!" These behaviors are in accordance with the duty to preserve innocent life, never to take innocent lives, including your own. And so, clear evidence of acting in accordance with duty. But that's not enough, right, for Kant. We can contrast that with the Terminator character in Terminator 2. Now, in Terminator 2, the character realizes that unless it is destroyed, Judgment Day can occur. So the chips inside its head are a threat to all of humanity. It can't kill itself. It's programmed to be completely incapable of, completely programmatically disinclined to terminate itself. But it nevertheless says, "You must kill me. I cannot self-terminate." Right? It recognizes and reveres the command of reason and acts out of respect for this law, this realization. And as a result, it must act from duty. So we see this distinction that Kant draws, and this distinction is one that has elements both of this exceptionless universal physical physics that Kant has studied, and this pious religious orientation, this selfless subjection to religious doctrine that he was brought up in. Right? So to be truly good, you can't just act in ways that are consistent with doctrine. Right? You must recognize the universal exceptionless nature of the doctrine and subject yourself to it out of reverence for it. And so we see Kant exhibiting these clear-cut indications of deontological thinking in his attempt to synthesize these two fundamental influences of his thought.